actually it's afternoon now, to all of you. I'm really, really happy to share with you this practice of mindfulness. It's something that I've been doing for many years. So I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk to you all about its impact specifically on stress. And you know, as many of you may already know, mindfulness has probably you've heard about it a lot. It's really kind of come into the foreground as a tool, as really even a way of living, a way of life that has this ability to not just reduce stress for people, but really increase the quality of life. And so really what I'm wanting to do today is introduce you to both mindfulness meditation, like how do you do meditation with mindfulness, and then also we're going to be looking at how to use mindfulness in everyday life. Some people are a little less interested in meditation and I would be more interested in how do I bring this into my everyday life. So we're going to actually be talking about both of these things today. I do usually involve people quite a bit in discussion, but my experience has been when we're recording, these people are less likely to kind of engage that way. But so I will periodically ask you to consider certain questions, but I'll rather than ask you to come in, I'll go on. But please, if you have any questions along the way, I absolutely welcome those, and Heather will be helping me. So, you know, I love to engage in discussion. So if that comes up for you, please do. If something comes up, please do ask. Okay, so let's start with what mindfulness actually is. Mindfulness has three components to it. The first is going to be focusing on the moment-to-moment awareness as it's experienced through your senses. So your body is always in the present moment. It can't be any place else. So when we come back to our body, the experience, what's happening actually in the body, then we automatically and instantly become present. And so we are engaging through our senses because that's how we experience through the body. Where the second component is with mindfulness, what we're doing is we're kind of toggling back and forth between an awareness of our inner world and what's actually happening. And this is inside. And this it doesn't have anything to do with your thoughts. It's really more sensation in the body. Maybe I feel a warmth around my heart or a tingling in my legs or butterflies feeling in my stomach or this kind of thing. So it's an awareness of the inner world and then also bringing your awareness to what's happening around you, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you sense around you in terms of maybe the temperature of the air, these kinds of things. And then the third component with mindfulness is always that these things are happening without judgment. So what you're doing is you're allowing things to be as they are. So really, anytime we are present to things without judgment, that's a moment of peace. We sense peace inside, and this is really what we're looking for. You all have had this experience many times. Anytime we are in a state of flow with something that we love to do, it might be an art project, it could be a physical movement like skiing or rock climbing, these kinds of things. Anytime we're in a state of flow where we might be aware of kind of an inner quality of being aligned and at what's happening around us, and the mind has stopped, there's no judgment occurring, then we are in the present moment and we're being mindful. And everybody has these experiences through their life and they're very, very renewing. Okay. So let's look at, a little bit closer at why would mindfulness reduce stress? So first of all, it allows us to rest. It allows us to rest into what's actually happening. So you're allowing what naturally wants to happen to happen. So you're not against anything. You're not thinking that something needs to be different or other than it is. That is really the practice. The practice is all about allowing things to be as they are and not getting in a struggle with trying to get it to change. We're also bringing our awareness to any kind of added thoughts and ideas that are distressing so that we can let them go. Thoughts, of course, with the practice of mindfulness do come in. So we begin to notice them and let them go. And so it really, like, if you've ever been in any kind of counseling, or have friends that are that kind of thing, it's popular these days to hear people talk about kind of bringing mindfulness to their own stories. Like, what are the stories that they're adding to what's actually going on? So it's this kind of thing. We're dropping our stories and coming back to just letting things be as they are. And then this frees us up from expectations. One of the interesting things about mindfulness and why it can really help with stress is that when we are present to things, they also have the ability to nurture and nourish us. If you're outside and you're present, you're seeing the trees, you're seeing the flowers, you're noticing how green things have become, this kind of thing, then those things actually nourish us and they nurture us and they cause us to rest. Whereas if we're all caught up in our mind and we're not even seeing these things, there's no opportunity to be impacted by them. Okay, so one thing I want you to consider is what do you suppose mindfulness might be addressing in our culture? Probably many of you are aware that mindfulness really has its roots in Eastern culture. But when it came to the West, it just took off, and it has been here quite some time, for decades now. And just think for a minute about why would that be? It's what's happening in our culture that it might be addressing. And then as we go through these things, think about how coming present, bringing your attention into the present moment might help with these things. So things like burnout. People are very burned out. Technology addiction, or any kind of addiction. Digital distractions. So just imagine like how coming into the present moment helps with these things. A sense of time famine that people really experience in our culture, along with constant busyness, and then a deep sense of exhaustion, right? All of these things really point to an inability to be present with things as they are. Okay. Okay, so let's take a little bit further look at how mindfulness came about in the West. Like I said, it has its roots in Eastern culture, but a secular practice of mindfulness entered the mainstream through the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn. Some of you may be familiar with his book, Full Catastrophe Living, a wonderful book. He started a practice. He started these groups called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Groups, MBSR. They're still around today. He was in the University of Massachusetts. He's an MD, and really started his work with cancer patients and had just phenomenal success. And because of this, thousands of studies followed, not just with his work, but as other people came onto the scene with mindfulness. Just thousands of studies have been done documenting the benefits of mindfulness. And now what we're seeing is his groups, the mindfulness-based stress reduction groups, are in hospitals, they're in schools, veteran centers, prisons, therapy offices. We have many of these groups in Salt Lake City. They're all over the US. And really the research on this is so extensive and it's readily online that I'm going to leave that to you if you have an interest in kind of looking further into that. But what I would like to go over with you all today is what the research has actually found. So one of the things is that it brings physical, psychological, and social benefits in as short a time period as 3 weeks. So really 21 days of practice, you will notice, and it's not just a small difference, really a significant difference. It's of course good for the body. It does strengthen the immune system. There are changes in the brain that are seen, and specifically with learning and memory. It is been shown to be one of the most effective tools there are for ADHD. It helps alter that focus of attention and ability to tune out distractions. And really it's because, there's a practice going on there of letting go of the mind stream and coming back to the present moment. And so as that gets stronger, it really has an impact on things like ADHD. It enhances relationships. Couples talk about feeling more satisfied, more optimistic with their relationships, more relaxed, and also more accepting of each other. Healthcare professionals talk about feeling more connected to their patients and just more able to handle the stress of their jobs. It has this wonderful ability to counteract overeating and obesity because people are becoming more present to what's actually happening inside the body as they're eating, and it brings a more intuitive component into that. It helps PTSD for veterans. Parents talk about feeling more just better about and happier with their parenting skills. It fosters compassion toward other people, and it really helps support emotional regulation and increasing positive emotion. Okay, so we're going to move now to the practice of mindfulness. And I want to start with the practice of meditation, and let's kind of start with this question about, is mindfulness meditation and mindful awareness in everyday life, are they different? Actually, they are not different. And I think most people kind of off their top of their head might say, yeah, a meditation practice and mindfulness in everyday life are different. They really are not. Meditation is actually a 30-minute microcosm of the macrocosm of what you might be practicing in everyday life. You're developing the muscle of concentration for mindfulness. So this is really no different than like learning to play the piano or learning any other like a sports type skill that you're trying to learn. Meditation takes practice and really kind of throwing yourself into it. It takes kind of what I call for, learning sports or that kind of thing. You have to have a tolerance for that geek phase that everybody goes through where you just can't do something very well, right? Most people will sit down once to meditate and say, oh, I can't do that. And then that's the end of that. But meditation, just like anything else, you're going to go through a phase where it feels like you can't do it. And then all of a sudden it starts to kick in as you get stronger, as the skill gets stronger. It helps you stay awake and present to your own life, regardless of which one you're doing. It's going to cause you to be calmer in your responses to life, either practice. And meditation, it obviously reduces stress, and it improves cognitive functioning, and it boosts well-being in the rest of your day as you're practicing. Okay.
Hey, Charlene, we had a question.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's stop.
So the first one said, is it healthy to be in the moment?
Is it healthy, like physical healthy or mentally healthy?
Not sure. That's just healthy.
Okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's and I'm wondering if there's if it's as opposed to kind of a thing, if somebody is like as opposed to kind of being in your mind stream, it's actually very healthy to let that go and come present. Yeah. If I have a little bit more information, I might be able to add to that.
Okay, I'll let you know if there's anything. And then the
Okay.
next one is, do you think mindfulness might be a thing now because we just have more time to worry, and that if my life was more full of things, like how people back in the day worked more hours and had more household chores to do, then I wouldn't have time to get caught up in my own worries? I sort of know the answer is no, that more busyness is not helpful, but this is something I think about sometimes, and so I would really appreciate some explanation.
That's really interesting. Yeah. y- you know, I think that there's an assumption somehow that when people are really busy, um, maybe their mind is not going. And for some tasks, I think that's actually true, that it's hard. If you're going to be paying attention to what you're doing, there's not a whole lot of thinking that's going on. However, back in the day when people had a lot of, repetitive chores, I'm sure they were in their mind a lot, you know? So I don't know that mindfulness has come about just because I think it's just become more accessible to a wide range of people more recently. Um, there have been people that have been practicing meditation in all faiths and religions, even outside of different faiths for a long, long time. But I think it's just become more accessible in our culture, now. And it's like, I don't know if there's any more that person would like to share about that.
All right, that's all the questions so far.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Heather. So let's look at how do you actually practice mindfulness meditation. I do want to say before we even start this that any kind of guided meditation I think can be really helpful at the beginning and help you kind of stay on task. As you kind of move into your own personal practice, you're wanting to look for a place. The posture, you can either sit on the floor, many people do. They also sit in a chair. It doesn't really matter time of day. Sometimes people like to have a regular time of day because it gets them into a routine. And again, amount of time, you always want to start with a short amount of time, even just 5 minutes is fine. And then just add a little bit of time as you go. Secondly, as you sit down, find to, I was saying sitting on the floor is just fine to sit in a chair. And I think in our culture, more people do sit in chairs, that's more comfortable to them. You want to start with an intention. And if any of you do yoga practice, this is very common in yoga as well, of just bringing attention to why are you here? You know, I'm wanting to be more present to myself and to my life, and to have more ease in my life today, or whatever that might be. And then we're starting with a body scan, starting at the top of your head and just moving through the body, looking for any tension or holding, and just resting into things as they are. So again, like we talked about earlier, you're not trying to change anything. You're just kind of settling in. So if there's pain, you just notice that there's pain there, or tension is I'm just resting into it and allowing things to be as they are. But as we do go through a body scan, the body does begin to let go and to rest as we bring attention to it. Then what you're doing is you're moving to an awareness of the breath. And when people first start a meditation practice, it can be really helpful to kind of engage the mind in these little games of counting. You might have heard people talk about, counting the breath, where they might count up to 5. And if they only get to 3, then they start at 1 and they keep practicing getting up to 5. And then if they get up to 5, then they start again at 1 and go up to 6. Then they start at 1 and go up to 7. And doing that all the way to 10. And some people then will even count backwards. What you're doing is you're giving the mind a challenge and something to work on. And then again, what you're doing is you're just noticing when thoughts come in and get in the way of that. Like I said, if you only get to 3, it's probably because your grocery list came into your mind, or that kind of thing. And you notice that you were trailing off. And so you're coming back to the present and to your breath, and then back to your counting exercise. This is not something that you have to do, these little games, but they can really help you kind of get through that initial phase. That can help you learn to stay a little bit more concentrated. And then as you do get a little bit more concentration going, you can begin to let go of that and just kind of stay with the breath as your initial exercise. That's not what you're doing the whole time. Many types of meditation will stay with the breath, or be having you do different kinds of things. Mindfulness has the breath then go into the background, and what you're doing is you're coming into your sensory experience. So as I was talking earlier about your kind of toggling back and forth between your inner experience and your outer experience, what you would do is bring your attention to what's happening inside me, inside the body. And I might notice that there's some pain there, or pleasant sensation, or a warmth around my heart, or tears behind my eyes. A lot of times as people actually sit down and bring awareness to this, emotion will come up. And what you're doing, if that happens, is you're just letting everything be as it is. You just let it come up and move through you. You're not trying to figure it out. You're not trying to get it to go away. You're just being present to it. Then you're also moving into your outer awareness. Many, not all, some people have their eyes open with meditation, but many people keep their eyes closed. So sound is something that can bring, that you can kind of tune into with your eyes closed. But again, you're not trying to change anything. So let's say there's some kids outside your door that are kind of in a screaming fight, or that kind of thing. And you're thinking, I'm meditating, I need to get up and tell them to be quiet. Actually, with mindfulness, we're not doing that. We're letting everything be as it is. Or there's a lawnmower outside of an open window, and I think I need to go close it because it's bothering me. The practice is really just to allow everything to be as it is. So we're letting go of any attempt to manipulate or control our experience. And this is a lot of what begins to allow for stress to reduce and to come down. And then again, anytime we're drifting into thought, we're coming back to the breath or sound or any kind of primary experience we might be having. It could be inside the body, like maybe tension in my shoulders. I just would bring my attention to that and rest into it. So let me stop here too and see if anybody has questions about a practice of meditation, mindfulness meditation, or anything anybody would like to share about their own practice with this.
So we have a couple questions.
Sure.
Someone said, is this applicable for trying to sleep? My mind swirls around disagreements I have with an opposing counsel because I'm an attorney when I'm trying to sleep sometimes. Any modifications for this while trying to sleep?
Yeah, this is a really great question. The practice of mindfulness meditation can be incredibly helpful to sleep. But what I would say is that you need to practice it before you're able to really do it in bed at night. If you're not practicing, and I've gone through periods where I have stopped my practice and I'll wake up at night and try to do this. I'll try and it won't work. It's, and it also has to do with if anxiety is involved too, that can kind of keep the mind going. But when you have an ongoing practice of meditation, what's happening is you're really building that muscle of being able to let things go and come back into the present. And if you're able, it helps you be able to let go of some of that mind stream and just come back to the breath or to the body, like really feeling the blankets around you or in feeling safe or your head on the pillow, noticing, bringing awareness without any kind of thought or judgment to an inner sense of still being tired. Okay. And yeah, you'll go back to sleep. It's very effective, but really it requires some level of practice. Okay.
Okay, and the next one is, can you explain the intention portion? Do you go into intention thinking about resolving a specific stress?
I think that can be just fine. Really, intention is entirely up to you. You don't need to there doesn't need to be like a certain type of intention with mindfulness. I think it would be fine to say, let's say you're feeling stressed about an interaction at work. It's like, my intention is to kind of rest into my body experience, right? My body experience of what has been going on and letting go of the stress around maybe a particular issue. That would be fine. But just be aware that really what you're doing is you're bringing your awareness to just what's happening in the present moment around that issue.
Okay, I think that's it. Someone said, thank you for answering those. They really appreciate what you've shared.
Great, wonderful. Okay. And so let's look now. Oops, I'm going to actually pass that. Oh, this is an old presentation. We had taken those out before, so I'm sorry. When I'm with people and we're actually have the ability to practice together, I will use those slides. But what let's go to now is how we practice mindfulness in everyday life. How are we going to be doing that? Leaving the mind stream again and coming into our senses and finding out what's going on in the body, okay? So what this kind of practice is that we're paying attention on purpose Okay, so let's say you decide to go for a walk. You're saying to yourself, with purpose, with intention again, okay, I'm going to go on my walk and I'm going to drop thoughts and judgment, or I'm going to walk across the university campus today and I'm dropping thoughts and judgment and coming into my senses. Okay. Again, we're bringing attention to our senses in both our inner and outer world. We're coming into becoming aware of our breath. So let's kind of stay with this idea of walking. I'm going for a walk. Okay, so I would start with becoming aware of just my breath. And again, the breath is always happening. It brings your attention into the body. The body is always present, can't be any place else. And then you can also use, you can, as you might trail off while you're on your walk, you can bring your attention back to your breath, but you can also use a single word to come back. And many times people do. They'll, let's say you might use the word open, like I want to be open to my experience around me. Or maybe you might say to yourself, letting go. Or people use the word like love or something that is more spiritual to them. Any kind of a single word can be used also to come back to the present. One of the ways that people can also practice mindfulness in everyday life is to pay attention to their walking. And what I mean by that, kind of beyond just going for a walk, like I was talking about, would be really paying attention to the movement of like your heel hitting the ground and kind of the rolling of the foot, and then kind of the rocking motion of the body going back and forth. So really paying attention to your walking, your actual, the movement of the body. It sounds easy, but it's actually not. And again, you'll trail off into your mind stream, and then you might become aware of your breath. You might use a single word to come back, and you're coming back into the present. And you might, so what we're talking about with walking meditation, that's a way to kind of anchor yourself and bring yourself into the present. But you also might do it just kind of as we were talking about before, of toggling in and out of your inner experience and your outer experience. So you might say, what's going on inside of my body right now as I'm moving? You know, oh, I noticed some anxiety, right? That I bring some awareness to. There's some anxiety in my stomach. I feel a tightness in my throat. Then maybe as I'm kind of going along during my walk, I begin to notice that I'm noticing outside of myself the trees, and their trees are beginning to flower, and just noticing that. And again, it's nourishing me, right? As I bring attention to it. Then maybe I toggle back inside again and notice that that tightness in my throat has sort of loosened. It's not so strong anymore. Or so just kind of bringing awareness in and out. This is another way that we can kind of ground our practice. And then with walking, a lot of times people will use breath synchronizing, like walking as they're walking, maybe there's 2 breaths to each step, or that kind of thing. To give you another example, washing the dishes is like a wonderful way of practicing mindfulness in everyday life, because there's all kinds of sensory things going on with washing the dishes. There's the weight of a dish or a pan in your hand. There's the sound of dishes clanking together, or the sound of them, the silverware going into the dishwasher. There's the warmth of the water on your hands. There's maybe the scent of lavender soap. There's, there's a lot of a great amount of sensory experience there that you can practice letting go of my mind stream. And of course, with a repetitive a task like washing the dishes, our mind stream is going all the time, right? But a wonderful way to practice strengthening that muscle of, as I trail off, coming back into the present and just noticing, how do I feel inside right now in this present moment? And what am I experiencing? And noticing how that just helps me really let go of any tension and stress, that I really get a break when I come present like that. Okay. So I also wanted to just, bring your, talk a little bit about activities that support awareness really naturally in everyday life. Things like walking in green space. You hear this a lot, how, how helpful being in nature is, that it kind of just naturally draws in all of our senses. Anytime we're monotasking or unitasking, we are setting up the conditions to be able to be in more of a flow experience. When we're doing a lot of things at the same time, we're not likely to have the opportunity to go into any kind of a flow experience. Of course, if we establish parameters around our devices, we put them away, we're making ourselves more available. There's a woman that I read about that I thought this was just a really interesting thing that she had shared, was that she was CEO of a company, and she said she had this aha moment that she had stopped looking into her children's eyes because she always had a phone in her hand. And so she'd be talking to them, but she was looking at her phone all the time, rather than actually looking into their eyes. And so again, it's like putting devices away. It makes us more available to these opportunities for real connection, right? And then anytime we open ourselves up to new experience and adventure, like traveling, anytime we go traveling, it's why people love traveling so much, is that it brings our, it pulls our attention. We're having to pay attention to things that we don't even usually have to, like trying to navigate in a country where you don't know the language or that kind of thing, or everything is new. It really just supports a mindfulness practice naturally, where you can just bring some awareness to, wow, how do I feel after after I go on a trip someplace totally new for 5 days? What is that like? And what do I notice in terms of stress reducing and this kind of thing? So, and just being aware that you want to be allowing whatever you're experiencing to just be as it is. That's really the practice. The practice is that piece of letting go of judgment, that anytime judgment is not there, we have a moment of peace. We're letting go of expectations. We're just allowing what's happening to be there and to really have an opportunity to experience it. So I do have one more thing I'd love to share, but I'd like to see if there are any questions too about just practicing in everyday life. If anything is coming up for anybody.
So in the chat, Someone said, so what you're saying is we have to ask the mind to instruct itself to synchronize itself with the physical me.
Say that again. Read that to me
Kind of
again.
like
Yeah,
sister.
that's
So what
okay.
you're saying is we have to ask the mind to instruct itself to synchronize itself with the physical me.
Yeah, in a sense, it that is making an assumption in a way that it takes. It depends on what you're calling mind. If you're calling the mind the thinking mind, then I would say not so much. Like when I was talking about maybe doing some games with counting breath and that kind of thing on a meditation practice, then yeah, you're inviting the mind in to be part of the practice, right? But actually, mind and the thinking mind is different than awareness. We can have awareness of things without engaging the mind stream. And that's that's kind of something you actually have to experience to have a sense of it. But it's kind of interesting. Like if my mind isn't going, if it's not like, let's say rock climbing. People really, really like to rock climb because it pulls their attention 100% into, because there's an element of danger, into the present moment and exactly what I'm doing, right? The next thing, the very next thing. Is the mind going when you're doing that? It's an interesting thought. It's not really the case. Or what's happening is there's full tilt awareness of I'm fully aware of what it is that I'm doing next, but I'm not actually engaging the thinking mind. A lot of times as soon as you engage the thinking mind, like let's say you're skiing and going down a mountain, that might be when things get tripped up and you fall, is when you start engaging the thinking, you know? And like I said, we've all had these experiences where there's a difference between awareness and the mind. So you don't always have to engage the mind. Again, I hope I didn't trail off so far that I didn't answer the question, but if somebody wants to ask more about that, they're welcome to.
He followed up with, who is I? I thought I is the mind.
Well, and that's that is one of the things that a mindfulness practice addresses is, who is that I? Is the I the thinking mind, or is the I present awareness, where does a self still exist when I am present to everything around me and inside of me? That is one of the things that any kind of meditation practice, mindfulness practice, brings more insight to for people. Is it's, of course there's an I, of course there's a sense of self, but it's like, most of us are very, very identified with being our thinking mind, that there's a little person inside of there. And what a mindfulness practice begins to show you is that there's a lot of peace and a lot of ease in life that can happen when we let go of what we think that I is, and just being present to what's actually happening, you know?
Okay. And then the next question was, any tips for extreme anxiety regarding traveling, being prepared, having things packed for the kids, etc.?
Oh, that's a good. That's a good question. Yeah. Um, you know, there's the thing about traveling is that there's always things that are outside of our control, right? And so I think that, one of the ways that we can support ourselves when we're feeling really anxious is to do what this person is talking about, of preparing ahead of time and doing whatever it is that we can to prepare. But then there's an element of it of having to let go and allowing for what shows up that might be outside of our control. And I would really encourage that person to use our service to for anxiety, because there's a whole lot that a therapist can do to help with being able to deal with that kind of anxiety when you're traveling. Yeah.
Okay, and then someone had a comment that said, one thing that I used to do for meditation was lie down in a hammock outside and try to identify all the sounds I could hear. For example, birds, freeway, AC unit, etc. It was really helpful for me to take my mind off things of that day.
I love that. That's just beautiful. And I just love that you shared that, because, yeah, you're bringing attention to the fact that just when I'm able, to let go and really become present to what it is that's happening right there in the moment, that that I get relief that way, right? There's ease and relief from the stress of the day. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, the next one said, any ideas for awareness activities while with children on a particularly stressful day?
That's a good question. Usually children are really very much in the present. A lot of times we have to kind of match where we have to go to where they are. But I'm wondering if there's, like, on a particular stressful day, if there's more like what that might look like. Is that kids fighting with each other, or yeah, what might be happening on a particularly stressful day? Did they want to say a little bit more about that?
I haven't yet, but I'll see if they say anything.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the last question so far is, how are ways you can suggest to enjoy a small trip and not stress on everything, like a small vacation? For instance, when we have done a, in quotations, reset trip, I can't seem to relax and enjoy the time, which I relate to this question. I do that too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, um, I would practice mindfulness. That's what I would really encourage this person to do, or you, Heather, um, is bringing because there's so much around you on a trip that's available to you, right? That's new. If you bring your awareness to it, I would really encourage you to, um, just like we were talking about before, of do everything you can ahead of time to prepare. And then it's really okay. I'm gonna let go of this from here, and I'm gonna actually practice coming back to my body awareness at what's happening inside of me. And I might notice that I'm really anxious. And guess what? If I notice I'm really anxious, then what the practice is to not get in the way of that, not to have any judgment about it, to allow it, again, to allow it to be there. But what you're doing is you're actually experiencing the anxiety. You're allowing your awareness to kind of settle into it, and ask yourself things like, what's actually happening? I feel butterflies in my stomach, or I feel tension and a holding, or I feel, like I have a black knot in my stomach. And when I bring attention to it, it's a very loving thing to do when we actually bring attention to what's happening inside of ourselves. The body will begin to relax. It may not go away, but we're not looking for it to go away, right? So we're just bringing awareness to, oh, there's that anxiety that I get when I travel. And then maybe toggling back outside of that and notice what's happening around me in the present. And can I allow some of these things that are actually happening right here in this moment to nourish me, to actually nourish me? And I always encourage people to ask when they're doing that, am I okay right now? Am I okay right now in this moment? It's very rare that the answer to that is not yes, because if it is yes or no, that you're not, things aren't okay, your attention will be 100% there. You'll be paying attention to what you need to do to take care of that thing that feels not okay. Most of the time, you're just fine in the present moment and saying, hey, I'm okay. And look at this, the kids are playing and everybody's having fun. And how am I doing? What's actually happening here? Yeah. And can I just allow things to be as they are? I hope that helps.
Yep. And then some people gave some suggestions with that.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear them.
Vocalizing how you feel with whoever you're on vacation helps, and it allows them to help you feel more comfortable.
Good.
When traveling, I don't overpack or overplan. You don't have to hit all of the tourist traps. Take things slow and easy.
Love it. Yeah.
Someone said, I prepare, but when I'm there, I'm not able to focus on the reason for the trip or what I was hoping to get out of the trip. My mind wants to think about what happened at home through the week or at work.
And that's a classic example of how mindfulness practice could be really helpful to that person. Yeah.
Okay, and then a couple more. I love this, guys. This is great that everyone's so
It is.
about asking.
It is. It's wonderful.
So the one that asked questions about the kids, she added more and said, lots of chores at home, trying to get things done, but also unable to step away alone to try to get present. Hopefully that makes sense. So the awareness activity would be for the parent.
Yeah. Okay. And so again, you're not trying to get anything around you to change. So you don't have to get away from it to practice mindfulness. You don't have to get away from anything. You could sit down right in the middle of a screaming fight going on if that were possible. But there might be all kinds of chaos going on around you. And it's just bringing awareness to it without judgment. It's like, of course, if something dangerous is going on, you're going to intervene. But, let's just say kids are screaming and having fun and there's a lot of activity going on. It's just, you would just be in the present moment noticing, like, oh, look at this. And then you might notice how you actually feel inside. Maybe you feel really like strung out and this is making me feel really tense, right? But again, it's a very loving thing to do, to bring your attention inside and just notice how all of this activity is affecting you inside. It's like all of a sudden you're there for yourself. You're just witnessing it. You're just resting into what's actually happening inside of you because of all this activity. Or maybe you go inside, check in inside, and there's a certain joy that kind of bubbles up around all this sweetness of the activity that's going on around, So just want to bring in, that you don't have to get away from everything. You may want to get away from everything. I can totally appreciate that. But to practice mindfulness, the skill is really to allow everything to be as it is. Yeah.
Okay, that's all the questions so far.
Okay, so I want to, some of you may be familiar with the poet Mary Oliver. She writes poetry about being very present to the natural world and what can happen when we engage with it without judgment, and how we may even see things that we have not seen before. And so I want to read you a poem that she has written that I think really speaks beautifully to mindfulness in everyday life. And certainly I'm open to any further discussion after I read this to you as well, but I really would love to share this with you. This poem is called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand and is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous, complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one and precious life?